Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar series that we are going to be hosting, all about Mind the Gap, transitioning from student to employee shared experiences. My name is Dr. Marissa Brouwers, and I'm the current president for SIOPSA. We are also live on the YouTube channel, so for those delegates that joined us there, welcome and thank you so much for joining. For those that's on this webinar, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And then also to our panelists sharing their experience this afternoon, Ayadu Iwinyu, Debbie Mtsilwane, Salome Jansen van Vieren, and Owethu Mvelu. Thank you so much for being able to share your experiences and just giving back to the community as well. I would like to introduce our panelists this afternoon. First up, we've got Ayadu Iwinyu. She's a registered industrial psychologist and also a director of Africa Careers Network at the African Leadership Academy. She has a vast experience in career psychology. She's very much involved in various universities where they set up programs to help individuals and students transition from being a student to being an employee. So Ayadu, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. Debbie Mtsilwane is currently a lecturer as well as a program leader for human resources at the School for Industrial Psychology and Human Resource Management at the Northwest University. She's also a PhD candidate at the Tilburg University and the Netherlands, and she's a registered HR practitioner at the SABPP. So Debbie, thank you so much for also being here this morning, and she's got a lot of experience in terms of students and in also that transitioning from being a student to becoming an employee and what's going on in the world of work. Salome Jansen van Vieren, she's an aspiring industrial psychologist, currently working in her capacity as an intern at Kutzer and Associates. But she's also started working while she was studying in various different industries. So having that knowledge and gaining those skills, and she's definitely going to be sharing with us what she has learned during her time from student and working and also being in the world of work. Last but not least, we've got Owethu Mvelu. Owethu, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. She's a registered psychometrist and also a certified career coach, currently a human resource analyst at Anglo American. And she's also got her own channel in which she shares career guidance, advice, and actually, let's say, transitioning experiences from being a student to an employee and also personal branding. So, Owethu, thank you so much. I'm going to give over to Ayadu. Ayadu, thank you so much for being here. Yes, you're welcome to share your screen and share your expertise. Right, you're welcome to share, and please just remember to unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Just a moment as I share my screen. Okay. Okay, cool. Once again, hello everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Ayadu. I am an industrial psychologist, like Dr. Marissa mentioned. I'm excited to be here today and to just talk to you about what I am almost viewing as from classroom to career. I work with, just for a bit of context, I work with various young people from all over Africa, helping them think about what their transitions from the university into the world of work looks like. And so some of these things that I will be sharing are personally lived through experiences, but also things that I've observed as ensuring that an individual is able to kind of thrive within the first few years of work. So I'm going to start with a bit of a quote, and this is how I'm approaching this conversation. There's a book called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, and one of the things I read a number of years ago, which I wish I could have read at the beginning of my career, was that careers are a jungle gym and not a ladder. What this means is that we almost need to look at careers as a fun thing, right? So we're going to spend, literally when you finish university, you're going to spend so much time just working. And so how do we have fun as we work? I think my job, I usually think about it, is empowering people to have fun while doing their life missions. And also just understanding that growth in a career doesn't have to be linear. It can be horizontal. It can be taking different curves, etc. So that's why the concept of a career as a jungle gym and not a ladder really stood out to me. So maybe let's take a bit of a step back. Looking at both the scenario of what school and work looks like. So at school, you have a set schedule, you have flexible timetables. In the sense, I say flexible timetable in the sense that this is not good, but you can choose to go to class or not. There's a schedule that's set for you at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the semester, which you have to follow. There's optional attendance, like I said. There's clear feedback mechanisms. So I will write my report and I'll get feedback from my supervisor as regards to whether it's a good quality or not. Advancement is guaranteed. So you'll do your undergrad, and if you're interested, you'll do your honors, and if you're interested, you'll do your masters. And there's a set schedule in terms of the courses that you will kind of explore. And then there's also friendship cycles, which you get to choose, and literally the friends are just friends, right? People who either support you with your schoolwork, people who support you in your life, etc. Within the work setting, there are set schedules, and there's also time when you need to be at work in most instances. So if you think of the new world of work, and I'm hoping somebody will address that, but I know the concept of 8 to 5 is going to change, but there's some organizations that expect you to be at work, and they expect you to show up every day, right? So there's a set schedule in terms of we know what we're going to be doing at specific times. In some instances, you have flexibility to do things outside of, as long as you're delivering the things that you need to be delivering on. As I said, mandatory attendance. You can't wake up in the morning and don't feel like going to work without a good reason in that regard. And feedback is actively sought and freely provided, right? So you have to go and seek out the feedback. And in some instances, it comes to you whether you like it or not. Advancement is earned, right? So nobody says that because you've stayed at an organization for 1 month or 2 months, then it means that you're going to be promoted. Advancement and promotions are earned, and relationships matter. I'll talk about the relationships bit some more during the presentation. So I almost want you to think about there's differences, but there's also similarities. One thing, as I almost go into the next portion of the conversation, is having spoken to and observed various people as they transition from university into the world of work. The number of the times I've had students say, I don't understand why I need to go to work every day, that I did not expect. You know, the way when you're in university, you know that in June, in the old, this is pre-COVID, in June, I will have a break and I will go on holiday. And yes, maybe you may be studying, but you don't necessarily have to go to school. Within the world of work, you have to go to work every day. And the leave days are dictated for throughout the year. And that kind of shocks people. The whole idea of staying at work all day also shocks people. And we can talk about that as we go into the next section. So as I was thinking about the concept of a jungle gym, I thought about it in the sense that what are the ingredients that essentially mean that you're going to be successful if you approach your career as a jungle gym? And I thought about the analogy of a cake and the ingredients that you would need to put in place in order for you to be successful in baking a cake or bread or whatever you want to make. And so the first ingredient I thought was the idea of social networks. So your network is your network. I know you've had this a lot, but within the workplace, it's really, really important. It's hard for you to advance and get exposed to various things if you go into an organization and be a loner. So you have to be very intentional about going in and building relationships with your colleagues. As a personal story, by nature, I'm very reserved, and I honestly believe in the whole idea of I want to do my job and I want to gain recognition based on merit. The world of work, unfortunately, doesn't work like that. People need to know you. You need to get to know your colleagues. So one thing that I did when I first joined my first organization, when I finished my master's, was first of all, my master's was very helpful in helping me recognize who I am. So creating a self-awareness. So that's really, really important. And being comfortable with who you are and finding strategies of how to build a social network for yourself. So for me, the one thing that I did was try and meet a new person each week. It's uncomfortable in the beginning, but once you sit down, because I connect better with people individually, once you sit down and talk to people and you get to know what they are doing and they get to know what you're interested in, you're slowly beginning to build your network within the organization. These people also, once they have an understanding and are vested in your growth, so to speak, they open your eyes to opportunities, because sometimes you actually don't know what you don't know. You assume, and the truth is you come from your master's excited. You're like, I have the answer. I want to solve all the problems. And true, you have been given that mandate, but there's also an importance of kind of taking a step back to understand what the world of work looks like. What does business, how does business operate? And how do you go about functioning successfully within this environment? So these people who you speak to open your eyes to opportunities, both existing, but also future. And in some instances, when you're not able to find yourself in specific environments, these people within your network are able to advocate for you to get exposure in different areas which they think would be helpful in you growing your career. So the next ingredient that I looked at, I think speaks very closely to what I just spoke about, the experience and the exposure. First things first, stay humble. Like going to an organization with humility. Yes, like I said, you have left your university, you have this really powerful qualification, either you're a psychologist or you're a psychometrist or whatever your profession is. You've gone in, you have been awarded in your past year, you have been almost at the top in your school. Like think of almost like, for example, from grade 1 to 8, you are the grade 8 equivalent education-wise. And so there's a sense of pride that comes with. But I also say it's important for you to employ or indicate or show humility. Accept that you're new. And then with the newbie status comes a lot of other things. So have the right attitude. What is the right attitude, you may ask? I think demonstrating that you're dependable. So when you're given tasks to do the job. I know this may be controversial because sometimes as an entry-level kind of employee or as the newbie, you get given the tasks which people really don't want to do. But I typically said to him who's given much, much is expected. If you want to be given more, you need to demonstrate that when you're trusted with the little things, you're able to still deliver on that, right? So yes, it's not getting stuck in the admin and the small tasks which you feel may not necessarily grow you, but also remember you've built a network. So if you're able to sit with someone and help them, ask them to help you or coach you, think about how to maneuver the workplace and how to get exposed to additional tasks. But it's easy also for them to advocate for you if they have had and seen for themselves that the little things that you've been given to do, you've done them excellently. And we'll talk about a bit more about that. Then also seek stretch opportunities. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with an employer and we're in the process of placing some of our students in jobs, etc. And I asked him, what does a successful student or a candidate look like to you? He said, somebody who in an interview, I will ask them a question. I'm not looking for a right or wrong answer. I just want to see that they're able to kind of explore and think differently and ask about things which may not necessarily be comfortable to them, but seek exposure in opportunities which stretch them and which grow them, basically, right? So it's, yes, you go in and indeed you're given a scope of work in which you can operate, but there's also no harm in exploring what else exists in the organization and seeking to work in projects across different environments in which you can build your skill set. Working in cross-functional teams and projects, that's really, really important. You're building your network. Remember, I spoke about your network and your net worth. So getting exposure, you're also building your skill set, which grow you vertically, which grow you horizontally, which grow you in every single way. Develop new skills. I think the importance of that is really, really important. Yes, developing of the new skill, you have worked into an organization, share the skills that you have, right? So also referencing the network idea. So it's not you just always getting from the network, but also what skills have you come in and how do you diplomatically contribute to projects with your skills, but while you're contributing, also developing new skills, which essentially make you successful. So just having the continuous mindset of continuous growth is really, really important. Continuous self-development, continuous learning, curiosity, discovery, not being afraid to ask questions, right? So getting exposure to the right kinds of experiences, but also not being afraid to fail. And I know this one, again, is controversial, but I think we learn by making mistakes, as long as you're not making costly mistakes that affect the organization, but also not being afraid to say, well, I tried it this time and it didn't really work. How else can I try it? And who from my network can I kind of pull in to help me solve a problem or an issue that I may be experiencing, or a growth area that I may be experiencing. The one thing as well in terms of like developing new skills, I think it's also important. For me, I'm very big on give back. As you're trying to develop and you're honing new skills, think of the environment around you. Who do you think would benefit from your skill set as you practice, but also as you hone the skill sets that you have? Where can you volunteer, right? Within our communities, there's different types of businesses, especially now. There's different types of businesses who are looking for skills that may not necessarily be able to pay for, right? So it's opportunities to volunteer. And while you're volunteering, you're also honing your skills. I have an example of one of our students. So one thing that these students did, they wanted to build their skill set on how to develop websites. But they were not going to be easily trusted by organizations to kind of come on board and build a website for them. So the student went on a journey of self-development, went online. There's all sorts of resources available on the internet. Went online, taught themselves different things about website development, then did their research and went about identifying specific organizations within the SMME space who may benefit from rejigging or revamping their website. So he built dummy websites, reached out to the organization and set up some appointments with them and said, I want to walk you through what I think would really increase traffic or improve the quality or the outlook of your organization using a website. 3 of the 5 organizations who he reached out to responded to him and actually adopted what he presented to them. So at the beginning, he offered that service free, but because these organizations have or operate within a network, they were able to recommend him to other businesses. And in so doing, he's literally created a side hustle, but it's not so side anymore because it's really growing in leaps and bounds. So it's just finding yourself and exposing yourself to the right kinds of opportunities within your organization, but also around you, right? So it's what's the micro and what's the macro kinds of things. And finally, as I was thinking about the ingredients for a jungle Jimmy kind of career is delivery. So I cannot stress this enough. So the way I thought about it was using a 5 Ps approach. So being able to predict problems before they occur. So think of the example I just gave of the student. That's something that's external, but what within your immediate organization? What are you able to kind of see and scope as you're sitting in different projects, as you're sitting in different meetings? How are you applying your critical thinking and saying, oh, so maybe they've thought about this, maybe they've not necessarily thought about this, but I predict that this may be an issue. And how do you bring that up, right? So predicting the problems before they occur and voicing them in a diplomatic and respectful way. Prevent, right? So develop solutions to potential problems. So it's easy sometimes to go into an organization and say, oh, okay, so I am entry level or I'm early career. I may not necessarily have the permission or the knowledge, that self-doubt or imposter syndrome idea, that I may not have the knowledge to necessarily provide a solution to this issue. How about when you're sitting with your manager? and you're able to say, well, I've observed that this is something that's kind of happening, and proposing a couple of options which may be solutions. So the thing that I like about my team is I have kind of taught them and said, if you've seen a problem, don't just flag the problem to me, come to me with possible solutions. Because in so doing, you're building expertise and you're actually contributing meaningfully to the team and to the development and the solution of the problem that exists. The third one is plan. It's so important. It's really, 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 really important. Like, there's all sorts of gadgets these days. You can use your phone. The one thing I usually say is have a journal, like a notebook. In some organizations, you can go in with your laptop and take notes, but always keep a calendar. Nothing will come to, no harm will come to you if you're able to track and plan the things that you need to do, but keep a calendar as well. Have a to-do list. And the reality is, especially now, for me personally, the to-do list exists, and not always will I be able to kind of cross everything from the list. But as much as is possible, I'm able to keep track of the things that really matter, to keep track of the things that really matter also within my calendar, and stay ahead of deadlines. So within the school setting, sometimes there's opportunities for you to negotiate kind of a change of a deadline with your lecturer or whoever it is. The same exists within an organization, but if you become that serial person who's constantly asking for deadlines to be moved because either there's a poor time management aspect on your end, or maybe you're tardy, or whatever that looks like, then you're kind of damaging your reputation. And the world of work is really small, right? So one day you'll come potentially to your manager and ask them for some form of reference. And people remember the slightest and smallest things, right? So just be very careful about that, and always, always try as much as possible to stay ahead of deadlines. And if you perceive that you're not able to stay ahead of your deadlines, it's very, very, very important for you to communicate that well in advance to the people who are depending on you, whether within your team or whether you're reporting up. The fourth thing is participate. Volunteer for opportunities, get involved. And I think I touched on this in the previous ingredient. Get involved with things that are happening within your organization. Get involved with things that are happening outside of your organization. Get involved with things that are happening within your profession. There's so much happening around us. But if you kind of cocoon and stay in your corner again, you're not building yourself, you're not developing your network. And these days, the whole idea of a jungle gym career as well is not necessarily, if you're building a network for yourself, and if you're just understanding that opportunities that exist for you may not necessarily be those that are just directly advertised on websites. These days, people increasingly are getting jobs or opportunities through, what do they call it? Referrals, through referrals. So if you're able to be in the right place at the right time, but also just exposing yourself and being giving with the skills that you have, then you're able to expose yourself to the right kinds of environments and really, really grow in your career and do amazing things. The final one, and I spoke about this, is perform. It's so important. For example, I have a student who recently got a job, and the student wanted to do something on a Friday afternoon. And they figured that they could leave work at 11 o'clock. And they thought that if I just take my lunch hour early, then I'll be able to complete that which I needed to complete. The student left work at 11 o'clock. 1 o'clock reached, they had not completed. And essentially they stayed away and did not communicate to everyone, right? So they did not work a full day and they did not communicate what they needed to communicate to the people who were depending on them. The week later, this same student's mother fell ill, and the student decided, the job candidate or the employee decided to, of course, go and take care of her mother. But before she did this, she did not communicate this again to her manager. So she stayed away for 2 straight weeks, completely silent, not communicating and saying, look, this is the situation. She just basically went missing in action. I cannot imagine how frustrating the employer was, but essentially, ultimately, when she finally got in touch with them, she just said, look, I don't know when I'm going to come back. Keep the job for me, but I don't know when I'm going to come back. Unfortunately, the employer had to make a business decision and she had to be fired. It's not an ideal situation, but what I'm trying to stress here is that you have to show up. And when you show up, you have to give your best. And when you are not able to give your best, it's very important for you to deliver. I mean, to communicate this in time to the people who are depending on you. Within the school environment, yes, there's group work, and we all know that those people who get away with not doing much and end up earning credit for that. Within the world of work, it's hard for you to hide. Although people do succeed, but it's hard for you to hide and behind people and not deliver, because if it's project-based work, you have a portion of work which people are expecting you to deliver for the success of the project or for the success of the organization. So it's important for you to always deliver quality and to deliver in time. So in summary, right, there's some ingredients. These are just basic, simple things that are simple, but are really, really important. And they go a long way in getting you to the place where you want to be in terms of like your career and how you grow. It also helps you think about the right kinds of networks from the very beginning. And there's nothing like a wrong network or a right network, but I think it just kind of guides the conversations and how you approach people to help you and how you approach the world of work, but also remembering that you are ultimately in control of your career. The whole concept of, waiting for you to be rewarded for different things is kind of passing, and the world of work is really changing in that aspect. And so it really needs you from the very beginning to take action and to just be more proactive in managing your career. As a final thing, I don't know if any of you know this book, but it's called The Startup of Me by Reid Hoffman. Again, The Startup of Me by Reid Hoffman. It is a book which essentially guides you through the things that you need to be thinking about within your career and how to treat your career as a startup. And it just gives you the pillars and things which can help you think about that and accelerate the things that you want to do with yourself. That's it from me. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Debbie. Debbie, over to you.
Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It is so exciting to be on this webinar this morning, and I am really excited to share with you. I'm really excited this morning to share with you basically what I call a graduate toolbox. So this is basically what I believe you as a student or as somebody who's currently starting off as a new employee would need in the journey to kind of have the right tools in place and have the right elements in place to prepare you for your profession, to prepare you for wherever you're going in terms of your career goals. So I've called this the Graduate Toolbox. And to start us off, I'll quickly give an example of this is a fictional character. This girl's name is not Laurie, but as you can see, there's an example. Let's just take this. Laurie is a human resource management graduate, and Laurie has applied for numerous jobs. Currently, she's looking for employment. She's finishing her studies, and this is the email she has just currently received from her employer or potential employer that reads as following. Dear Laurie, thank you for your interest in career opportunities within the Johnson & Johnson family of companies. We have received your application for the position of Human Resource Leadership Development Program internship. After successful consideration, we regret to inform you that you have not been selected for this position. Sincerely, Johnson & Johnson recruitment team. This might sound very familiar to many of you as you read this piece of information as an email, because some of you might have applied for opportunities and you've received a number of rejections as you're applying for jobs, or you are in the process of applying and you fear that you will receive an email just as read now by that Laurie received as she was applying for work. And you know what? It is okay. It is not the end of the world, because I think when we receive these emails after you've applied for your third or your fifth application, you kind of get discouraged and you feel like, am I ever going to get a job? Is there opportunities out there for me? You really feel scared, nervous for what the future might hold and the opportunities that might be there. So this is just a reminder that if you have received an email like this, do not stop applying for work. And if you haven't, and you do apply in the future, and these are the emails that you do get, please do not be discouraged in any way whatsoever. Continue applying. I remember in my honors year, I had applied, I think if I'm not lying, for over 30 to 80 opportunities, because you were so eager to find employment. So you apply everywhere and anywhere so that you can just get employment. And it is a process itself. Looking for a job is a job itself. So allow yourself to make the time during the day, or make a time in a specific week to really invest in applying for work where you're interested to apply. So don't let these kind of messages get you disgruntled. And when we think about what employers want, and one of the things that scares us the most in the process of applying for work is that whole, you are required in an entry-level position, you are being told you need 5 to 10 years experience, and that puts you down. You don't apply for that job because you think, well, they wouldn't take me anywhere because I don't have the experience. And you're asking yourself, but how am I expected to get experience if I'm only a new graduate right now? Who is giving graduates opportunities right now? You know, and sometimes you do get discouraged by what we see, because if they want me to get experience, that means I should have gained the experience when I was 10 or 15 with what they require from me. So, but ultimately employers also want more than just experience in the sense. And you ask yourself, okay, what is it that employers are looking for? What is it that employers are, what they want from me? And I'm currently doing my PhD study in exploring specifically the graduate competency gap between from industry or from academia into industry, but I'm specifically looking at the HR perspective of the graduate competency gap. And some of the literature that I've read up on, the work that I've read up on with regards to what industry require, what they need, and what they're currently saying right now about graduates is the following, and I'll highlight some of them here. The first one is what industry had said is what they receive from graduate, the quality of graduate that they receive and what they expect is not the same. There's a quality level that they have, expectation that they have of the quality of graduate they want, but that's not what they're getting from the graduates that are applying for jobs. And the second one was that the different skills that are needed and the skills that graduates present do not match. They're not the same. So therefore, and this was specifically focused and they had spoken specifically about accounting graduates. And another element is the GCC had admitted that, or had said that they experienced a dissatisfaction with regards to graduate skills. And not only does that dissatisfaction, is it bad, but it has cost implications for them, it has quality implications for them. So it is really a huge knock for them to employ new graduates because they realize they don't have all the necessary competencies that is needed for them to needed for these employees. And the last one that was also mentioned, one of the literature elements that came forth was that graduates are expected to have the right amount of skills, knowledge, capabilities, and attitude, and which was not the case. Not all of those elements were met at that level that the employers want from the employers. So we need to understand, for me to be able to secure employment, I need to understand what is it that the industry requires of me during this time. And then we speak obviously of the competency gap, because we know that there's a graduate competencies, that's something that you have. There's a list and a vast number of competencies that you possess as an individual, but there's also competencies that the industry requires from you, because there's certain types of jobs that you need to do that require those skills. And the first one we look at on my left-hand side on the screen, you'll see graduate competencies. These are difficult to name and list or mention because every individual has their own set of competencies that differs. You might have great leadership skills, great organizing skills, great, you have different skills that might look different to the next person, to the next individual. So those are, it's really a bundle of a lot of graduate competencies. However, some of those competencies hopefully match up to what the employers expect. And you'll see there's a list of 10 that the World Economic Forum has identified there These are currently right now in 2020, and I think for the next year or so, will be the skills that are really important. Some of them might change a little bit because of the new world of work that's changing, and as we're moving to a very much technologically advanced element, there will be some that are added to the list and so on. But sit down and ask yourself, from these 10 competencies, which ones do I need to work on right now to improve myself, to know that, or that will help me ultimately to add a competitive advantage for myself for industry. So really ask yourself, am I able to solve complex problems? Am I able to, in a work situation, think creatively and bring up solutions? Am I able to create new businesses in my creative thinking, or to really add value to the company? Am I able to manage my emotions? And do I have emotional intelligence, not just my own emotions, but am I able to, in a session where there's conflict, am I able to find resolutions and still be able to manage people? You know, these are the questions you need to ask yourself. What am I good at? What competencies do I have? And if I don't have them, how do I improve them? And that's a question you need to ask yourself. Then, if you realize some of these competencies need to be improved, then work towards a place where you can improve those competencies. Then we speak of employers. Obviously, the competencies we've just mentioned right now, they look at that, but it's not just a CV and an interview that determines whether you will get a job. Organizations go through a rigorous process when they employ an individual. And we need to be mindful of that, because when they employ you, or they'll go through the selection process, yes, they will look at your CV, yes, they will interview and ask you a series of questions. But we do need to bear in mind that the series of questions that you're being asked, as well as the series of assessments that you do at the organization during the selection process, or wherever you are during the selection process, are embedded in these 4 elements: job fit, supervisor fit, organization fit, and team fit. And what they do, or what the employers or the selection committee does, they basically ask you questions and do assessments to determine, are you, as an individual that we've seen, we've read about, we've asked you questions in an interview, are you fit? Do you align with the current job that we have open, or the position we have open? And they're going to also further on during, let's say, for example, during the interview, they might have the supervisor that you will be working close or hand in hand with. The supervisor might pose some questions. They might discuss a few things during the session as the panel members to determine whether you will be a good fit to the current supervisor or the manager that you'll be working alongside with or underneath. And ultimately, they'll also look at the team fit. Are you a good fit to the team that's currently, are you going to be adding value to what they currently have right now? You know, do you have that competence we've mentioned earlier on creativity? Does it add value into the team? You know, are you able to express yourself? Are you able to communicate effectively? Are you going to be an asset to the team, or are you going to be a liability? And ultimately, through the use of assessments and all the other questions that are being asked during the interview, they will also look at the organization fit, who we are as an organization, what we value, how we would like to be seen. Does this person speak to that? Will it be the perfect fit for us as an organization? So bear in mind that when you do apply for jobs and when you go through a selection process, employers look for more than just an individual through an interview session. They look at all these elements through using interviews, looking at your CV, looking at with the assessments that they do. So some organizations do not use the rigorous processes that other organizations might use. They might just do an interview and, for example, and look at your CV and make a decision. Whereas other organizations will specifically utilize 3 to 5 assessments just to determine whether you're a fit and whether you can work for the organization, then make final decisions. So do bear in mind that if you do get it rejected or you do not get accepted for a position, it's not that you're a bad candidate. It just might mean that you're not a good fit in some of the instances of this organization. And maybe it is not where you would have flourished or you would have done well or you would have grown as an individual. So do bear in mind the process that goes into selecting individuals. Then I speak of a graduate toolbox, which I mentioned earlier on, what do I need to have right now in my box? What do I need as a student or as a new employee to make sure that I secure the right position, I secure what I want to do, what I'm passionate about, what I'm called for? What can I do to prepare myself better? And these are the following things that I really want to highlight. You need to have the right knowledge. You need to have the proper skills and the number of experience, gain the experience, learn and grow in the process. Networking, I already mentioned something earlier on networking that is very key and very important. Learn how to network, and I'll touch on each of these elements now briefly. And another one is personal branding, which is so important right now in the times that we're living in. And the first one I'll quickly touch on is knowledge. For example, let us say you are currently studying industrial psychology and you want to become a psychometrist. You would know that you would need to do a degree and an honors degree for you to be able to reach that level. However, if your desire and dream is to become a registered industrial psychologist, you want to work in that field and then later on have your own practice after a number of years of experience, that's your ideal goal ultimately. Then you know that an honors will not be sufficient. You'd have to move on to doing a master's, then obviously do an internship and write a board exam. That is your requirement. So go ask yourself and look at your current status and ask yourself, is the career that I'm doing or my formal education training good enough for the goal that I have in place of becoming a psychometrist, a industrial psychologist, or whatever your career goal is? Do I have the right formal training currently, or what do I need to do now to make sure that I can reach my goal? So make sure and look at your current formal academic training and do what you need to do, or take the next step in terms of advancing that. Online courses and workshops, invest in yourself to do online courses or workshops so that you can gain the additional knowledge about the field and about the trends that are currently happening right now. Some of the online courses being presented, I know of specifically Harvard that is presenting online courses. Some you have to pay for, some are free. They've got a data analytics course that you can do. That one you pay for. The free ones, you only pay if you need the certificate. So allow yourself to go into the key courses or key topics that are within your field that you feel these are huge trends. I need to gain knowledge. I need to understand how to work so that you can build up your CV, build up your career, build up yourself as well in the journey. And the following one is the skills and experience. How do I gain skills and experience while I'm still a student? How do I get the 4 years of experience? Well, you might not get full 4 years of experience as a student before you go into your first job, but you can utilize time in terms of during your studies or as you go on holiday to do job shadowing or holiday internship, where you propose and you offer your services and your time to an organization that you like or that you feel is doing something that you like in your field, and ask them, can I offer my services or my time during holidays to do an internship with you? I do not have to be paid, because organizations are very reluctant to open opportunities that are very, for example, if you're going to come only on specific weeks on holidays, and for them to invest in you and give money is not such a big benefit for them. So offer your services to put, for example, do the kind of the work that is required to be done, let's say for free, and say, I'm willing to do it for free, because you're still going to gain the knowledge and the experience that is needed during that time. So allow yourself to gain that experience during job shadowing and holiday internship. Some you can consider, obviously, if you can't do it for free and you've already graduated, consider graduate programs. There's a lot of graduate programs available out there. What I know of, BP has a great graduate program, Unilever, Nestle, Johnson & Johnson. These are some of the companies that really have very extensive graduate programs that you get to learn a lot of things about the company, about your field, and about the different departments within the organization. And it's a year, and some of them are stretched to 2 years. So allow yourself to gain the necessary experience needed there. Networking, very important. That is an important element that I think all of us need to be constantly doing. I will not speak much on it because it was touched on earlier on, but build strong relationships with your peers, people that you're studying with, even your lecturers. One element I want to highlight here, sometimes as a student, you're required by an organization to provide, for example, a reference letter. if you do not know your lecturers and don't know you, it's difficult for them to give you a reference letter and to kind of promote you or to help you with a letter that's going to stand out so that you can be considered for a position. You know what I mean? So build relationships, even if it's just 1 or 2 lectures, you know, so that you get to know them, they get to know you, journey with them, so that when you do require that, you can get a letter that actually is not just a general letter of saying Michelle is a good student, she's been studying at the Northwest University, and it's just a general letter, but that it's a letter that speaks to who you really are as a person, someone that can vouch for you in the journey. So try to build that relationship, because now you start to see the importance of having these relationships in place. Get a mentor, whether it's an academic person who can mentor you, who you can use as a soundboard. Get a mentor who's maybe already in industry. Connect with key experts and professionals out there in your field so you can learn from them, see what they're doing, hear what they're doing. Whether it's connecting with them on LinkedIn or whether it's connecting with them on professional portals. Use that space to learn, grow, take in from where you can from people who are already in the industry. And another one is personal branding. There's so much to say about personal branding. I can say a lot, but I just want to urge you on this, that look at your social media platforms today. Google yourself today and ask yourself, what I'm getting from my social media platform, what I'm reading about myself, what am I seeing about myself? Is it presentable? Is it neat? Is it looking, is it what I want my employers to see if they do search me on the online platform? So if it's not, go clean house, clean it up, make it neat, make it look presentable, get a LinkedIn account, make sure it's presentable, make sure it looks nice, and that you are able to sell yourself, even if you are not doing anything right now, but that if employers do consider you, that they can look there and they can see this is the type of person we want to be associated with. Alrighty, then seeking and securing employment. These are just 4 elements that I think are so important why you do that, to really self-assess who am I as a person in terms of my skills, abilities, and what I value. And based on that, then draw it back into the type of employer or the organization I would like to work for. You go look at the websites, you go look at them, you speak to employees who are already working for the organizations you are interested in. You go see and search about the employers on social media or Google search them and ask yourself, based on who I am as a person, after my self-assessment and who these employers are, their vision and mission, their purpose, do I want to be aligned with them? Is it the type of employers I want to work for? And then therefore market yourself to those employers, whether it's just having a good LinkedIn profile, a CV, or applying. I'll speak about applying right now. Or when you do get an opportunity to market yourself during an interview, to really present who you really are as a person and not try too much or try to fake it and just be you, you know what I mean? And apply for jobs. When we do apply for jobs, you can utilize employer websites to search for jobs, employment agencies, professional associations, if you are associated with a specific professional body, career centers, and career fairs. So this is just the steps I would give you to say, self-assess in terms of who you are as a person, link that towards the type of company you think speaks to who you are as a person, market yourself, then apply for the jobs that you want. This is not very clear on the screen, it's a bit small, but you'll probably be able to see the key points. Stay away from CVs that are very lengthy. What I mean by lengthy is CVs that are like 5 to 6 or 7 pages, you know what I mean? Try to stay as focused as possible with your CV, where the employer can see who you are. For example, Michelle Mulder, and you are a industrial psychology graduate, honors graduate, then the key things that you put in your personal profile, you can put in your achievements, but key things that they really want to see, your education background, your years of experience. Obviously, if you don't have that, you can utilize in that space, you can put in your awards and achievements, you put in your skills and abilities. These are the key things they want to see. So do not try to put extra information that is not required in your CV. Put information that is needed in the CV and that you saw in your application that they were asking or highlighting about, then bring it into your CV, what they're asking you, so that whatever they have asked and what you've provided aligns, even if it's not exactly and perfectly meets their requirements, but at least you have given what they need. So do not try to have lengthy CVs. It really just it takes away from your application. make it as simplistic as possible. Yeah. Then you will end up obviously in an interview, and when you do get there, as much as the organization is interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. You want to see, am I going to fit here? Is this the type of organization I want to work for? Do I want to see myself here in the next 4 years or 5 years or however many years you're planning to stay in that organization? For example, the first thing that you're going to do, make sure that whatever your career objectives are and whatever the job is and whatever the offer, make sure that they meet. You can't settle for, let's say your dream is to become an OD specialist and you are being placed in recruitment and selection, and you're asking questions during interview how the position looks like, and you realize there is no space for growth, or there is no space for you to lead or to go into OD, then you would reconsider reconsider that position, or reconsider that whole option. Warning signs is so important. If you're having a bad interview, not because it's only from your side, but you're realizing there's really the interview itself is very negative, and the managers and the people that are interviewing you, you're not feeling some sense of belonging, or you're not feeling like you click, or there's just something that you're not feeling about the organization, or you've had chats with the current employees there that are very negative, then that's a warning sign during the interview that maybe this is not a perfect fit. And ultimately, you need to go explore whether the benefits being given by the organization meets your needs. Your needs might be, you want to grow in specific areas, you want to learn a lot, you want to study further, and you realize that they don't have such benefits for you. So you need to reevaluate again. So as much as I said earlier on, you are being interviewed, allow yourself to interview the organization to see, is it really where I want to see myself in the next few years? Then the elevator pitch, which is so important, that basically just says, who are you as a person? It communicates the idea of, who am I as a person? An elevator pitch is a personal brand statement. That's a way, and it's also the first impression you get to make, whether it's through an interview, because during an interview, they will ask you, please tell us more about yourself. And from my experience, seeing students, being interviewing students, for example, on honors, for honors application to do their honors, or being interviewed for masters, and you ask students to just ask who they are. They'll tell you, my name is Michelle, I am from Rustenburg, and I have 2 brothers and a sister. And as much as that is important and true information, that is not what the employer or the person interviewing wants to hear. They want to hear, who are you as a person? What are you passionate, ambitious about professionally? What are you good at? And what are your prospects in life, in your career? They want to hear that, because that sells it. The fact that you have a family and all that is beautiful, it's good, and it's true, but it does not sell you to the employer. So make sure that the impression you get to make during an interview, or whether you be interviewed telephonically, or whether it's your social media platform or via your email that you send, make sure it speaks volumes to who you really are as a person. Grammar, just the way you speak, in the way you carry yourself, make sure it's very excellent, that you get to make an impact with your first impression. And then the second, or sometimes people ask, but how do I compile my elevator pitch? How do I compile my personal brand statement? And these are some questions that I've just put up for you, just to get an understanding of, it will help guide you towards compiling that 3 to 5 pages personal statement in terms of who you are. That very same personal statement is a statement that you will then put on your, for example, CV under your personal profile. Because now it says who you are as a person. You can share that as they ask you in an interview, who are you? And you can share that. You can even put it in your CV, or you can put it as part of your LinkedIn account profile or your LinkedIn account bio. So this is really very important. Utilize these questions to help you come up with a personal statement that is very short and concise. It's not a long thing. What are the lessons learned? I'm about to finish with this. What are the lessons learned? What can I share with you? Tips, things that I've learned that have helped me grow as a person. I'm still growing. Sometimes people use the term, you have arrived. I personally think we never get to a point where we have arrived. I haven't arrived, so much to learn, I'm still learning. The first one is, be prepared to start from the bottom. I know as an honors student or a master's student, you feel like, I've studied for all these years. I'm ready to be a manager. It's okay to start at the bottom and build yourself up. Set for yourself short-term goals and long-term goals in place. Make sure that you know what you're going to be doing in the next 6 months, whether you're still studying, whether you started working, and know and plan ahead what you're going to be doing in the next 3 to 5 years. And I know it sounds very like, oh, but everybody plans, have it in place, even if it does not work out exactly on the same year and the same month that you've planned for, but at least you've got plans that you're working towards. Invest in your self-development and your career development. It is really, really important to really invest in your self-development and career development in terms of where you're going, learning new things. As I said earlier on, attending workshops. There's so many webinars happening right now in the various industries and fields and all that. Attend, learn, use this opportunity to learn as much as you can and to grow as an individual. Have a teachable spirit. Sometimes we feel like we know it all, but really have a teachable spirit. Allow yourself to learn new things that you might not know. Learn from people that are much younger than you, much older than you. Learn from your peers. Learn from your mistakes. It is very, very important to learn from your mistakes. Make the mistakes. It's normal and it's okay. Take the risks that are important or that are needed in a career. Sometimes we're scared to take the risk because we feel like, oh, what are people going to think? Or what if it fails? Or what if it doesn't work out? It's okay. If you do fail at it, then you know that it didn't work and you can try a different way of how to do it. Broaden your horizon. Allow yourself to do more than one thing. Don't just focus on one thing. Allow yourself to do more than one thing if you have the capacity for it. Read. Like, I can't emphasize this anymore because sometimes we shy away from reading because we feel like it's such a boring habit, but it's such an important habit because you're able to kind of have vocabulary, train your brain. You're able to debate in conversations, negotiate, and really be able to express yourself much better because you have a good vocabulary. So really just allow yourself to learn and read about what's going on in the field. Let's not always be on social media just for the fun of it, but really learn things that will enhance your thinking and make you a better person in your field, in your industry, and in just an all-rounder. Self-care. Yeah, this is so important. Like, as much as we all growing, wanting to climb the corporate ladder and grow as a person, but really look after yourself. Self-care, whether it's resting, whether it's doing specific things that are practical, that allow you and help you gain your vitality back, gymming, exercising, eating healthy, whatever that may look like for you. Invest in that so that you have a good balance, which is the 11th point, have a good balance between work and life, because that is so important to be able to continually strive towards success and excellence. And lastly, celebrate milestones and achievements, put them up on LinkedIn, share them on LinkedIn, which is important because you're building up your brand, you're building up your whole image, and people are able to see what you're busy with and what you're doing. And ultimately, that is it from my side. I hope you took something out of that session that will help you in your toolbox and enhance your job seeking or securing employment journey and into building yourself as a professional in your field. So you can, more than welcome, if you have any other questions aside from posting them on the site, you can follow me on LinkedIn or send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email. So thank you so much. And I'll now give over to Salome, who will do the next session for us. Thank you, Salome.
There we go. Thank you so much, Debbie. Appreciate that handover. Just quickly going to share my screen with you guys. Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. So I'll be talking about addressing the leap. So transitioning from university to work, but specifically speaking of my own experiences, what I've noticed, what I've learned, and especially also talking from a consulting perspective, where I find myself currently for 3 years currently. So, and I think due to the consulting, there might be perspective changes that also occurs because the environment does differ a bit to a more structured, more one's niche specific type of job, like for example recruitment or just selection, etc., like that. So without further ado, today we will be talking about the biggest leap and the shift required, the transitioning phase, becoming familiar with the reality, embracing the change and being future focused, and having some famous last words. So the biggest thing that must happen from going from university to a workspace is the mind shift that must happen. So your whole thinking about how you see yourself from a student mentality and thinking to a more matured young professional in the labor market at an entry level specifically. And with that being said, the whole way of how you carry yourself, the tone with how you talk to maybe student colleagues versus how you talk to colleagues in the workspace. Ayadu also summed it up perfectly in her session regarding the differences between university and the workspace. For example, the attendance, the feedback that you get very quickly, the hours, for example, taken into consideration the world of work and how it's changing. But if you look at your more traditional, your 9 to 5, etc., like that, if you don't feel like doing something, you must still persevere. It's something, the mindset and everything changes dramatically, and it's something that I myself also had some difficulty with, because it's actually a bomb shock that you go through, because everything you know changes immediately. But you go from that mindset actually of, I studied, I've got all this knowledge, like I know actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk in, I'm going to be able to can just ace everything. I'm going to know everything. And in reality, that was not the case, specifically with consulting with me as well. So as Marissa also mentioned, for some context quickly, so I started working the same year that I started doing my master's part-time. So I completed my honors full-time, and then I started my master's part-time and my first year of work full-time. So I will be touching on the mindset and everything further as we go along as well, because it's very integrated with everything. So the transitioning phase, specifically from a consulting perspective. So if you look at the university provides an excellent basis. So if you think the whole time about a house. Okay, so your basis and foundation is very strong that you get going out, leaving the gates of university and entering this big new world that you're going to find yourself in. And you get exposed to a lot of things, a lot of skills and situations that you can find yourself with in the workspace specifically as well. So if we think of teamwork, you get exposed. It's a bit more in a controlled environment though, in terms of you can choose who your teammates are, who you work with. You can choose individuals whose work ethic is also the same as yours, where this is not the case when you enter the workspace. The theory that you learn, you must know and understand theory before you can actually apply it. So, and the basis for that is extremely well laid down firmly for you to be able to can enter the new labor market, the new world that you're going to find yourself in. Things like time management. If you think, for example, in university, you've got your social actions, you've got your culture, you've got your sport, you've got the hostel specifically as well, your day and full-time hostels, then you've got your studies, academics, all of that. So there is a bit of time management skills that must be learned. But the mindset now again from a student, for example, is where normally the social interactions and all that would be prioritized above academic situations. For example, that the night before an exam or a test, we're going to go out, that type of thinking. Where in the workplace, your priority is the whole thinking of what must be priority one, what must get done, what's the things I must give attention to now. Even though it might not be something you like, it's something you must persevere. You must have that grind to be able to can push through that. So when I got into consulting my first year, I knew the what, I knew the basis, but I wasn't sure how to build the house, if that makes sense metaphorically. So, in terms of if you think of, let's take for example, medical legal. I've heard of it before, and I have attended a workshop where someone was still explaining to us how you do it, what's everything that goes hand in hand, what's the process. But actually, having to do it was a completely different story. So I knew the basis, I had the theory, I understood what had to be discussed, how, but the writing thereof, for example, was totally different to what I also had in my mind and how I expected it to be specifically. And it's the same with all the subfields. So in the consulting company where I'm currently, we get exposed to everything within our scope. So we aren't focused just solely on organizational development, organizational strategies, or just counseling, or just well-being, or interventions, whatever the case may be. So it's a lot of quick exposure. So it's a very fast-paced environment as well, specifically. And with that, you need to be adaptable. You need to be flexible. You need to take information in quickly. You only have that short time span of period of time to take in information, make the best of it, and then to apply it in that essence for someone that just came newly in. So with that also being said, I mean, working in different industries. Industries now again have got their own type of tone, their own type of behavior, and how you need to address people, etc., like that. If you compare, for example, the mining industry, and you compare that, for example, to academic institution and the academics field, total difference. So the way how I would approach, for example, a senior manager, or for example, let's say a team leader in the mining industry, would differ completely to how I will approach a dean, for example, of a faculty regarding certain projects. So that's also something you have to learn, and you learn it on the job. That's the thing. So the biggest thing is experience teaches you, and that's where you gain your confidence, that's where you gain your expertise and your knowledge. And unfortunately, with that as well comes failures. There comes a few stumbling blocks, some maybe bigger than others, and that's where that whole perseverance must come in again. And seeing those stumble blocks as something positive. You learn. There's so many learnings in failures. I've always learned the most actually in everything that I didn't succeed 110% in. But because of that failure, as people like to see it, or that stumble block, that actually helped me to be able to can successfully reach that goal and that mindset at the end of the day. And with all of that, for example, if you look at, as I mentioned, the structural political situations, for example, if you get your structured, more your traditional organizations, you must have you've got your work outfit, you've got your certain hours. Even though you're not maybe working, you must still be at work to show you present, etc., like that. To where in consulting, for example, if you're in the field, you can plan as much as you like. But on site, there's always going to be something that doesn't go according to plan, and you must be able to can adapt that, be able to can take into consideration what you have in your vicinity and to make something happen with that. You're not always going to have the luxury of, for example, if you do gamified assessments, to always have maybe plugs directly at your venue. A lot of the times when we only get to sites, we only know actually what the facilities are. So you're prepared to a certain extent where you can to you can't actually do more than that. And then when you get to the site, that is where the implementation thereof occurs. And with all of these experiences, no matter how small, no matter how big, that is where you're going to gain this experience to know how to build a house, for example, to try and make it more simplistic. So what type of wall must I use? What type of structure is going to be the best? Because out of these failures and stumble blocks are the learnings, and that's key learnings that you wouldn't have known if you didn't go through it. So a lot of adaptability, a lot of thinking out of the box, thinking a lot of innovative thinking, divergent thinking is very key specifically as well. Also in the workplace, always to know how to do things maybe better, what can be differently done, and knowing holistically what is everything taken into consideration, what it entails, who are all the game players and the stakeholders, etc., like that. So it's a very broadened thinking as well that you also need specifically. And this also plays in not specifically to consulting, but to all industries, where you can't just focus. We call it the silo effect. You can't just focus solely just like this. You've got to understand what the impacts are, what's the process flow, where does your role come in, etc., like that. And with that, also saying with consulting, there's good and there's also bad with consulting. So the good is exposure is excellent. You really get exposure to every single thing. Um, but with that being said, there's not that much time that you go into that much depth, that level of depthness to understand that niche specifically. For example, so with that being said, you touch on everything, but you won't, for argument's sake, can become an expert in everything under our scope, for example. You'll have your own niche areas, but you won't be able to do that with every niche because our field is also so broad. So that's also something to take into consideration. And how to transition actually from going from I've got my basis, I've got my foundation, it's solid, to how do I actually apply this is by having a deliberate mindset change. From actually before you actually even are seen as a graduate to already start making those changes. So, for example, instead of spending an hour a day watching a specific TV series that's not stimulating, it's not a value add, it's just for the fun of it, for argument's sake. Instead of changing that up to say, okay, let's look at today, we're going to do 2 TED videos about, okay, the world of work, how's AI influencing, what's the influence of COVID on team integration, what's the working not together, the connectedness, how are you still going to maintain that within a team, all these things, because that's going to give you the edge as well when you walk into the workplace, to also have this external knowledge as well that you must be and take the initiative of. You must be also responsible and you're accountable also. So the university does provide excellent solid foundation, but it's also your responsibility to also go further, put in that extra work, find out, talk to people in the industry, make networks, start rapport ready with individuals, etc. like that. The guys and the ladies and gents in the field are so open to actually help, but you must show you are committed to this specifically. So with that being said as well, so you must first be aware of what you're going to expect to know how you can counter it. So becoming familiar with the reality is in true essence a good factor to actually know. You must know these things. So for example, knowledge and skills. Foundation is great, but because it's a short time span period also of universities, they've only got that amount of time to teach you and learnings, etc. like that. You need to have that initiative to say, okay, what are the core issues? Ethics pertaining to fourth industrial revolution, to AI is such a big topic at the moment. Start creating your own thoughts. What are your opinions about this? What do you think of the influence, for example, of robots giving counseling, for example? All these things. And the only way you're going to know about these things are having conversations with people in industry, knowing what's happening, knowing what's up to date. Then criticism, this just comes with the emotional maturity that will come with the mindset shifts as well. Regarding, so if you, for example, get feedback in the workplace, that it is not taken personally, but seen as constructive feedback. Then the lack of everything, you might experience the effect when you're in the transition that you lack experience, you lack maybe further qualifications, the knowledge, for example. You feel you're lacking in I'm not good enough syndrome because I'm starting at the bottom. And Debbie also spoke about the entry level position specifically, which is such a reality. And with that also being said, when you enter the workplace, be realistic about your expectations. Just because you have all this knowledge, it doesn't mean you know how to apply it. You must still try and understand the context, the different environments, how things work, what the type of who's the key stakeholders, who's got the most influence, how does organizations work. Organizations differ from one another, so it's not a one size fits all type of thing. So it really is actually to your beneficial to benefit you to understand the whole dynamics regarding that specifically. The misalignment between theory and practice, that just is talking about the practicality, the how do I actually apply this? And this is where, again, the initiative for yourself comes in, where you must take the lead to say, this is what I want to find out more about. Who can I go to? Do I know someone? Do maybe my lecturers know someone? Ask for advice. Always keep asking questions, asking why, to understand fully what the impact, etc., is regarding that. Then the delayed gratification and the slow go movement, that comes back to also the expectation. know that you have to start at the bottom. And when you go for interviews as well, don't disregard maybe, for example, a job opportunity that you see maybe as beneath you because you've got a degree. It's that whole mentality of going from maybe grade 12, and now you a first year again, or grade 8 and grade 7, and now you're grade 8 again. So it's that drop again specifically. And there's a lot that you don't know. There's a lot that one must still learn, specifically going into the workspace. And with that, also in work situations, going for interviews, etc., don't focus on just purely academic achievements or what everything you've achieved so far. Show how your skills, how your talent, how you can be a contribution to the company. Do your research when you go for interviews and say, I've seen this is a new project that interests me so much because did you know A, B, and C, or whatever the case may be. Show you understand also what the company is about, etc., like that. Then losing your independence. This is a very, very reality, unfortunately, for a lot of graduates. So if you think about it, what happens if you don't find work immediately? Let's say in a time period of 1 to 3 months after you've graduated. Normally, if you were in a hostel, you can't place in the hostel anymore. If you were living off campus, for example, it's obviously a financial expense. So what happens? You move back to mom and dad. And this is another mind shift that a lot of graduates struggle as well. And they see it also as it's something to be ashamed of, which it's not. They're not alone. It's a reality. The employment rate or unemployment rate is so big and so high that if you do get accepted for a job, you must actually be so grateful for it because there's so many that do not have that opportunity. If you think statistic wise, in 2018, there was 24 million individuals between the ages of 18 to 34 living with their parents due to these circumstances. And the whole thing is you must sit them down, have an expectation discussion because you don't want to lose that independence. You've been used to living on your own, etc. like that. Then the misperception pertaining to academic achievements. This means that and talks to just because academically you excelled. Let's say, for example, you excelled. This does not mean you're going to get special treatment. In honesty, all the graduates are seen actually as the same. So you must actually show what skills, what talents do you have, what do you bring extra, how do you add value otherwise than just your piece of paper that says you graduated. So, and that comes also back to again the personal branding that Debbie spoke about. Who am I? What differs from me and the graduates around me? How do I add value? What makes me stand out? What's my strengths, etc. like that. Okay. Then if we talk about embracing the change and being future focused. So the key to success, guys, is to accomplish this is to by staying open to change and embracing opportunities. The only constant you can ever be assured of is change. Change is consistently happening everywhere. If you think of every sphere in your life, not even just work specifically. And the only way how you can actually get through this is to embrace it and to say, okay, what do I have control over? What don't I have control over? Focus on what I have control over and to work forward towards that. And this will help you to navigate the complex waters of entry-level employment. So remember to be flexible, open-minded, and persevere. Show that grind, show that work ethic. A lot of times when we get students to do their hours at us, the work ethic, you can see that mind shift has not happened as yet. There's more important priorities, such as, for example, going to an informal dance, whatever the case may be. So the priorities and the thinking of the matureness has not set in it. So if you already become aware of the decisions you make, start thinking, is this adding value at the moment for me going into the workspace or not, etc. like that. Still have fun, but there's a balance between it. And to remember, nothing good ever comes easy. If anything's worthwhile, you're going to have to work for it. There's no shortcuts specifically with that. So keep that in mind as well. Then just famous last words. So with all that has been said and done already, what I've touched on specifically, I want to tell you is don't be scared of the leap. Make that jump and make it wholeheartedly. I can promise you one of three things are going to happen. So either you're going to jump and you're going to fly, which is great. This is normally the exception to the rule. This would be, for example, if you land your your dream job the first time you apply for work, okay? Which is not all, that's not the rule. That's the exception to the rule. Then either you're going to jump and fall on something soft. So a small stumbling block here and there, but take learnings from that. Or you are going to jump and you're going to fall very hard. But the only thing that you, after all three these incidents happen or occurs, the only consistent thing that you can be sure of is you're going to get back up. So take the learnings in the situations. Don't be scared. As Debbie also mentioned, don't be scared of what people are going to think of you, and what other people are going to think of your decisions. If you believe in that, go for it wholeheartedly. If you fail, fail hard, because that is where the learnings are going to be. Make sure you learn something from that situation specifically. So we learn the most from things that are difficult. Okay, so, and you have a dream. Make that dream give you wings. Allow yourself the chance to fly. Don't hold yourself back. Go wholeheartedly into it. If you think, for example, about the White brothers, how many times do you think they failed at launching their aircraft or airplane for the first time successfully? It was numerous times, but after each failure, they knew how to adapt. What had to change? What did they have to do differently, maybe, to see if that worked? So it's the whole time a trial and error situation. And the same is going to be in life. You're going to have a few crash landings in life and in the workspace. But the whole thing is to persevere and have that grind and vision what you want and go for it with your whole heart. So remember that growth happens in failures. And if you don't fail, how will you know how to improve? And with that, it's the building blocks that you set for yourself up for yourself to can fly at the end of the day. You know what it takes. You've got what it takes. You've already got the paper to prove it. Now you must just go out and implement everything that you've learned. And don't get held back by anything. You must be the first biggest supporter of yourself. Okay, so always keep that in mind. Go hard at your dream and you will make it a reality. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to close off the session. You can either contact me also if you've got further questions. Please feel free to reach out regarding that. You can either email me, you can find me on LinkedIn specifically as well. So please reach out. Remember to keep your dream. Don't be scared. Go wholeheartedly into everything, and you'll be amazed at the results. So I'm going to hand over now to Olwetu to close off the session for us, and I know you guys will enjoy.
Okay, I hope everyone can hear me clearly from their side. Thank you so much, Solomi, for that. I think I'm going to start with my presentation. Let me just quickly share that. Okay. Great. So I hope everyone can see that. So I think before we start with my particular session, I just want to start off by thanking Dr. Marissa for actually inviting me on this particular webinar to share some of my personal experiences, but also I'm really hoping that I'll be able to share some necessary tools that you can actually also start applying for you to become the graduate within the corporate space. So I want to just first start off that session by doing that, and then just to check in with everyone, how everyone is doing. I hope everyone's doing well, keeping safe, as unfortunately as, you know, health care practitioners, we find ourselves in a very difficult space where we are facing this virus. And wherever you are, I'm hoping that you're taking care of yourselves as well as your families. So let's start with the session. So I'm just going to introduce myself briefly. I'm your presenter today, Olwetu Mvelo. I am an HR analyst within the mining space. I'm also a registered psychometrist, a graduate coach, and currently pursuing my master's as a student IOP psychologist registered with the HPCSA. So if we're really going to talk about what this webinar is all about and what you actually can look forward to in terms of the learnings today is, this webinar is for you if you are a future job seeker, okay? So that means that you're still in university, and whether you're first year student, second year student, but you know that you're going to be entering the job market very soon. Secondly, this webinar is for you if you're a final year student pursuing your honors or even master's level, or you're trying to get into a prestigious graduate development program, or you perhaps are a hopeful intern within IOP and you would love to get into an internship program where you're able to learn as much as possible from your potential co-workers that you'd be learning from. So for today's agenda, part one of this webinar, I'm going to be sharing what I call my personal career story. I want you to really gain some level of inspiration, but I really want to connect with you guys on a personal level to say that looking at where I am today, it's possible for you too. So I definitely want to share that and where I come from, as well as my part two. I'm going to be talking about why you should become a graduate, especially going into an entry-level position, why being in a graduate program is the best career move to start off your career. And last but not least, I'll be sharing what we call the Graduate Toolkit. And then if you stay long enough for our session, I've got a special bonus at the end. If you're interested to be an OM Insider member, stay until the end to grab your free special bonus, as well as a free registration to a Graduate Toolkit Masterclass. So I think before we begin, I really want to start off with this quote because I really, it's a quote that I really take personally as we stand as Africans where we are. Oh, hello, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now, all Wetu. You just went off a little bit.
Okay. Did you guys hear me initially, or should I just continue from where I am?
You can just start from your quote again, please.
Awesome. Okay, sorry for that. So I was just sharing a quote of mine that is something very, very personal to me. I'm my ancestors' wildest dream, and it speaks to
Oh, Wetu, sorry, you are on mute again. Can you just unmute yourself, please?
Okay.
Okay, great.
Is it great? Okay.
Yes. You were saying about the quote, and then you muted yourself.
Sorry for that. Let me just go back quickly. Okay, great. So from my side, I was sharing a quick quote in terms of, what it means to me, as well as being an African, that, a favorite quote of mine that I love by Oprah Winfrey, she says that you may come as one, but you stand as 10,000s, and that the people who have sacrificed so much for us to be where we are. So before we start the session, I want to share some level of gratitude and have that positive energy going through us as we try to learn in terms of how to navigate this job market. Okay, so I think before we start, I think it's great to share who I am as well as my own personal story, career story, and where it all began. And just looking in terms of, this young, naive girl from the Eastern Cape who didn't do very well in her matric, and she found herself having to repeat some of the subjects in 2013. And as soon as I got my subjects and as soon as I was ready to be qualified to go to university, I took the first bus driving from all the way from the Eastern Cape to Johannesburg Park Station in search of, to be schooled, to go into university, to be educated. I got in Joburg Park Station, not even knowing where Potchefstroom was. I had no idea. I've never heard of the town. And I wasn't even sure if it was in the Northwest, but I was able to find a taxi. And I was able to land in Potchefstroom, get there by the taxi rank. And yeah, to say the least, a bit of a culture shock from my side. Would really be downplaying it. But the first thing I realized was, oh, actually, Potchefstroom is a small Afrikaans town. And secondly, they don't speak Xhosa, they speak Setswana. So here I am with my bags, trying to instruct the taxi driver to take me to the Northwest University, where I would stand in those lines where thousands of us have queued in search for education, where I would stand in those lines, not even knowing if I was going to get into the university. At that time, I don't even think I had a university number, but I was so persevered. I persevered throughout that whole moment, making sure that I was going to get into this university. And after 2 weeks of going back and forth, I was able to secure my position within a program in a BSc Health Science degree. I did that. I graduated towards the end of 2017, realizing that actually physiology is not interesting and that the only thing that I really care about is the mind. That's the only part of the body that fascinates me. But because I was doing psychology, the only route I could take was in the space of clinical psychology. And I knew that my sensitive soul was not ready to really counsel other people because I probably would be crying with them during that whole process. So a friend of mine told me about a degree called industrial psychology. She said, you must go speak to this lecturer. They organized some time for me to speak to this lecturer. I don't know, Debbie, if you still remember me, but I went to your office on my final year, and you were one of the few people who convinced me to, to make that career change and go into the space of industrial psychology. And I did that, and I did my modules in 2017, 2018. And while doing that, I decided to then do something that was part-time, where I would be working and gain some necessary skill sets in the process. And just to keep me busy while I was doing modules while trying to qualify for my honors. And I got a job working at builders, selling credit to customers. So that was my first experience of work. And let me just tell you, it took me 1 week. I was completely traumatized. I left the job within a week because I could not stand the idea of being rejected. Trying to sell something that I did not believe in, but being rejected. That was something that I haven't really developed myself, or that level of resilience. So I left within a week. I tried applying for other jobs. I couldn't really get anything. And that's when it really dawned on me that it's actually difficult to find a job. And if I really wanted to stand out, I had to understand the job market. And so towards that end of the year, I started doing a lot of research. I started reading quite a lot. How do you structure your CV? How do you stand out in an interview? And what are employers actually looking for when it comes to graduates within the graduate space? And so once I was able to understand that and really hone some of the skill sets, I had a plan in place. But before I had a plan, I had to be intentional. And that meant actually identifying which program that I wanted to be part of in terms of a graduate development program, identify the employer that I want to work for, write it down and put it on my vision board. And today I am proudly saying that I have manifested that dream job, and I couldn't be happier. So you're probably asking, Olwethu, why should you become a graduate? Why should you become a graduate? Why can't you just get a normal job straight out of university? I made that conscious decision to go into a graduate development program because of the so many benefits that are offered, such as being able to rotate in multiple job roles, especially for someone who's new straight out of university. You're still trying to figure out your field as well as to understand what can I actually do, and do I actually like to do this type of work or be in the specific space or industry. Another point is accelerated career growth as well as exposure, increase in professional networks, as well as developmental opportunities. I've had so many opportunities to, number one, have the company pay for my university fees, but being invited to master classes, being coached, and being able to have people like Vusi Tembakwayos of this world who would literally work with the HR manager and executives, and I would literally be the youngest person in the room. just because I was in this prestigious graduate program, and not to mention the international work assignments that I've also been afforded to. I mean, for the very first time, I was given an opportunity to go overseas, which I've never been because I was in this program. So I always believe that the energy you put out there is what you're going to attract. And my manifestation formula is you have to know who you are. Who are you and what do you want? It's also talking about the power of intention, because when you become intentional, you know what you want, you know who you are. That is when the real magic can actually begin. So my personal career story, just to finish that off in terms of where I am right now, I find myself in a, a very prestigious graduate program, being selected out of 20,000 applicants, where I was the only HR professional within a group of thousands of engineers and geologists. And I had to make sure that when I was selling myself, when I was actually showing up in the interviews and how I was communicating through my job marketing materials, I was showing the value that my space or my field could bring by being part of this graduate program. I'm in a 3 to 4 year leadership accelerator program, where the whole purpose of BLAST is to transform or to create some kind of a pipeline of leaders within the business. And I've had the opportunity to occupy quite a vast number of roles, being a corporate recruiter, being a psychometrist, and being in charge of a mine, being an HR analyst, which is my current role that I'm currently occupying, supporting technical and sustainability within Anglo American. And then last but not least, I would love to go into early talent coordination, which is hopefully going to be my the very last role that I'll be doing as being part of this graduate program. Okay, so I think what I want to share with you guys is something that I quickly devised. Actually been working on in terms of trying to figure out what are the steps that one needs to actually take in order to stand out in the graduate job market? My colleagues or the speakers on this panel already spoke about important things like competencies. I think they've even called it the Graduate Toolbox. And I was like so surprised because mine was called the Graduate Toolkit. I was like, wow, great minds really think alike. But from my side, what I really want to talk about is, what do you need to do today? What can you implement today to make sure that you are able to stand out from the crowd? Because the competition is real. And I think we find ourselves in an environment where companies are not really looking in terms of cutting down their budgets. And these graduate positions and these graduate programs are not as readily available in terms of, this whole context that we're finding ourselves with COVID. So I'll be sharing my steps. But before we begin, of course, I like to start with a quote, a note to self: the world needs you to show up today. If you have the desire, it means that you can. So the minute you have the desire to want something, the minute you have intention, it means that you're capable. It means that you are possible in terms of actually creating that reality for yourself. So a question I'd like you guys to consider. Okay, before we start, if you've got a pen and a paper, please make sure to write these down. I really hope that you'll be able to gain as much value from the tips that I'm about to share with you. But let's just ponder quickly on this question, which is, how do you actually stand out in a graduate job market? And what are the steps that I'm just going to be sharing with you guys that will really help you along the whole process, right? So my first tip for you guys is you need to be intentional. You need to really handpick who you actually want to work for. And I know a lot of the times you see all these job applications that are opening and you are trying to really make sure that you're applying to as many as possible. But the problem comes is when you're not putting the quality in the job marketing materials that you're submitting in, right? So choose at least 10. Choose at least 10 employers that you really want to work for. Write that in a list. And then if you are sort of like confused as to who do I actually want to work for, you have to consider these following factors. Consider the organizational size. Remember, there's different types of organizational size. You've got small organizations, which are startups, medium-sized, as well as large, big organizations where when you're applying with your CVs, it will probably go through a robot, which we call the ATS system, before it goes to an actual human being who's going to screen your CV. So consider that Culture matters. What kind of work environment do you actually want to work for? Job hunting techniques. You also have to look in terms of that, as well as informational interviews. I feel like these are very underutilized. And if you really want to figure out who you want to work for, speaking to graduate alumni within the companies that you think you want to work for, or trying to create networks, either on social media, LinkedIn, or wherever, where you're able to speak to professionals within your space, you get an understanding in terms of who you are and what you like. Okay, my second tip for you guys is job description, because your job description is literally your map to your dream job. You have to use your job description as a map. And a lot of the times as young students, we're not really taught these skill sets when it comes to looking for a job. So when we look at a job ad, we don't really dissect it as much as possible. And what do I mean when I say that? The job description, if you're not aware, is actually divided into 4 sections. So number 1, you have to look at the information that they tell you about the company. When you open a job ad, what do they say about the organization? Does it say top 100 employees of choice? Does it tell you it's the top company to work for X, Y, and Z? What are some of the quotes, the metrics, the accolades they mention in that? Because some of that information is very useful for you to understand the company and to see perhaps how can I contextualize and try to make myself align better with the position through my job marketing materials, like your cover letter, for example. Secondly, do you understand that you have to look at the role description? What does this job advertisement tell me about the job? What are the behavioral competencies that they're looking for? What are the technical competencies that they're looking for? And then when it comes to responsibilities, if you then ask yourself, do I visualize myself doing this on a day-to-day basis? What are some of those tasks will I be required to actually adhere while occupying this particular role? And then last but not least, requirements and qualifications. This really speaks to, the minimum requirements for you to enter into a graduate program. Remember, as us recruiters, we know exactly who we want, and you need to be very distinctive in trying to communicate and to show the recruiter without us having to try to figure out what the CV means, that you meet the requirements. So it's literally a tick box exercise. And as a recruiter, I'm literally taking 20 to 30 seconds to decide, does this person go to the next round? So you have to make sure that you're really intentional in communicating verbally, written communication, which is very essential for you if you want to go to the next round when it comes to graduate recruitment. And then last but not least, the third one I want to talk to you guys about is a CV, because it really speaks in your absence. Your CV is a piece of paper that is supposed to speak for you and really stand up for you in that room without you being there. So your written, communication skills are what's so important for you. So when it comes to just breaking down a CV, I just want to give you guys 5 key points, or 6. So the first one is you have to have a strong personal brand. When I open up your CV as a recruiter, that's the first thing I want to see. I want to understand, who am I actually reading about? Who is this person? What are their dreams? What are their aspirations? What kind of industry do they want to go into? You're supposed to be communicating through your personal profile what you are all about and where you see yourself. And then when it comes to reference letters, I think sifting through hundreds, because I remember when I was actually I had turned the tables where I wasn't the graduate being assessed, but I was actually the graduate recruiter assessing for graduates. And the one thing that we don't like doing as recruiters is we don't like reading too much. We want everything straight to the point. So I would say no to reference letter, and perhaps yes to a referee testimonial in a nice, simple quote that you could put on top of your CV. Identify what your basic skills, and I always say you can really utilize some of that through looking at your job advertisement, because it's supposed to tell you what are the skill sets that are required for this person to be successful in this role. Your education is very important. Again, as a graduate, stipulate that you meet the minimum requirements. Spoon feed me as a recruiter so I know that you meet the minimum requirements so that you can go to the next round of recruitment. And then personal development. There's a huge difference between education and personal development. Personal development is showing that you're an ever-growing professional, and we want people who have some high level of learning agility and potential, who are going to be successful within a graduate program. And then last but not least is work experience. I think my speakers, Debbie really spoke very well on this, and Ayoda was talking about Sometimes we think that going to school is enough and earning a degree is enough. You could be one of the smartest people in the classroom, but if you do not have, or if you are not work ready fit in the sense, in the eyes of the actual employer, you are not going to stand out, because we don't, when you want to get into a graduate program or you want to work for a company, how do we find people who have had enough exposure in terms of working, collaborating with other people, so that we don't have to put as much time, energy, and money in trying to make them try to fit in within the organization, so that the socialization process becomes easier. So, for example, when I started working, when I was trying to find a job during my studies part-time in terms of my modules, I figured out, why aren't people calling me? And I realized it's because my CV does not stand out. So what I did is, while doing my honors full-time, I was working 3 jobs. And let's just not make any excuses as to if there's not enough time. If you're just focusing solely on your academics, you are not really helping yourself in order to stand out from the crowd, because the people that I was competing with were not working 3 jobs in a full-time program. So you need to ensure, how can you actually get that work experience through volunteerism, being part of student committees, VAC work, so many ideas that you can really run past. And then of course, ATS proofing. A lot of people don't know this. If you're applying in a large organization, actually, I remember very well, one on LinkedIn, one of my connections reached out to me. She really wanted to be part of my graduate program that I'm currently in. And she said, Oletu, I've been listening to some of your content, and she applied for the graduate program online. And then within 2 minutes, she got a rejection email. And she was furious because she could not understand. She was saying, like, what kind of company are you guys? You only didn't give me an opportunity. After 2 minutes to tell me that I don't qualify. And I was like, this is not a person who sent you an email. It's a robot. It's ATS. And if you don't understand how ATS proofing works, then you're not really aligning your job materials to make sure that you are being optimized when your CV runs through that system, right? So what are the keywords, the phrases, the language, the buzzwords? So many things go into that. And so the cover letter, because a badly written cover letter will eliminate at least 90% of potential candidates. If you have an option of attaching your cover letter on a job application, you must make sure that you do that. I think you should always actually attach your cover letter, even if they don't ask it. If there's space for you to attach it on the system, attach your cover letter, because your cover letter, when you're looking in terms of the structure, you should be communicating what you understand about the employer. The cover letter is not about you. It's about you communicating to the organization that you understand their business pain. What is the business pain, and why do they have this vacancy open? And that is depicted through what you talk about yourself in your cover letter. This is when you should sell yourself. You should show your personality. Do not be ashamed to sell your strengths and to focus on key activities, tasks, responsibilities, especially elaborating on your CV. But most importantly, you want to show passion, you want to show zeal, and you want to show that you are excited for this role and that you really, really want to work for this organization. I should actually, as a recruiter, after reading your cover letter, actually want to meet you. I should already know who you are and be excited to meet you, because you've already conveyed that level of excitement and energy in your cover letter. Okay, tip number 5 is social media for graduates. So I always believe, if you're trying to figure out if this is appropriate to post on Instagram, I always say use your mama rule of thumb. If your mother were to see this picture or this video or this piece of content that you're posting out, how would she feel? Would she be comfortable with that? So the same thing goes with all the information. Yes, as recruiters, we look at your social media accounts. Okay, don't get it wrong. We look at your social media accounts. We look at your Instagrams, but most importantly, we really try to focus on LinkedIn. But you are able to tell the kind of person based on what they post and the kind of company they keep and the kind of energy they bring on their social media accounts. So if that's something that you need to start cleaning out, keeping it a bit more user-friendly for a person to go through, then perhaps you should try that. And then when it comes to LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn and you're looking for a job, that is something that you should do today. You need to be on LinkedIn. Have a profile picture and a banner, something that's going to make your profile really pop. gather collateral to make it pop. That means attaching your CVs on your LinkedIn, attaching your certificates to show credibility, to actually show that what are you talking that you have, you can actually show proof through your profile. And I always say, don't use the easy apply option. I know it's quick, it's just one button, but when the CV comes to us as recruiters, it's very diluted. So I always say, if you've got the option to apply on the link, click on the apply button that takes you straight to the job link. And then connect with other professionals, use a platform to network, as well as create and share content. And let me tell you, even now that I'm currently working, I still get recruiters because of, the content that I share on LinkedIn, who reach out to me and go like, we'd like to invite you for interviews. And hence I've never even applied because of what my online personal brand speaks to. People have already associated some level of trust in terms of what I can bring. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you are literally shooting yourself in the foot, because that is a huge gap and that's a huge opportunity for you to really delve into. Okay, interviews. This is a time for you to really impress your employers. So I always say that, when it comes to interviews, you need to sort of like have a plan in place. Before an interview, you need to actually prep. There's a lot of prepping that goes into it, the company research, the logistic research, the market research. How do you conduct yourself during the interview? I remember we're interviewing for engineers who were doing their P1, P2 training. And one graduate was so nervous. He literally said the F word during the interview. And it's just stuff like that. You think that people don't, you shouldn't be doing such things, even through your nerves, or even asking about salary. That's not something that's very tasteful, especially while you're trying to get to know the employer. And then the after interview process, how do you actually follow up with a recruiter? Because trust me, we get lots of emails, we get lots of calls, and we're busy. So what's the best way that you can follow up with a recruiter on a job without annoying them? Last but not least, you have to do a thank you letter, without a doubt. I think a thank you letter is something that's going to really make you stand out, because I remember when I applied for my position, I did a thank you letter straight after the interviews. And once I got the job, the graduate recruiter said to me, when "Oh, do you know what? You were the only graduate who wrote a thank you letter." And that really spoke to me, because that showed some level of gratitude, the type of person that you are. And we were like, wow, we want to work with this kind of person. So a thank you letter is not a maybe, it's necessary. And then last but not least, assessment centers. I've had quite a vast amount of experience being in an assessment center. If you are going into a prestigious graduate program, you will be going through an assessment center. I think now we're looking at ourselves in terms of the environment we find ourselves. I think they're going to try to make it a bit more digital. But my personal experience, I had some highs, I had some lows. It can be a beautiful experience. And I remember sorry, can you guys hear me? Okay,
Yes,
sorry.
we can hear you.
Okay, apologies for that. I don't know what happened.
Wait till you got your speaker on mute again. Your mic.
Okay, I don't know what's going on. Okay, let's just open current slide. Okay, sorry for that. I don't know why this is happening to me, but I hope you guys are getting the gist of the message I'm trying to communicate to you guys. So I had a very, interesting assessment center when I went into this graduate program. At that time, I was actually I was supposed to do a test that particular week. And I made the decision of, do I study for this test? Or do I practice and prepare myself for this interview? And I think a lot of the times I took that risk of saying, I'm in this, I'm studying so that I can get into a job. Don't forget what the end goal is. You're studying so that you can get into a job. This degree that you're using is almost a tool that you're using for you to get into the market. So I made that conscious decision of going like, you know what? Okay, let's fail this test, but we're going to get a job. We're going to make sure that we prepare ourselves the best that we could. And it was an experience that was amazing. I mean, we're booked in 5-star hotels. We were networking with the CEOs and the executives within the organizations. And, for someone who's a bit introverted like myself, there are moments of disbelief and trying to figure out, man, this is so difficult. No one tells you about the social aspects that comes with assessment centers, and that the fact that your assessors are present. And that also is something that we don't usually really try to be cognizant of. So group exercises are definitely there. You'll find a lot of case studies that are very business related in terms of a problem, psychometrics, most definitely presentations where you'd have to present to a panel. And of course, the social aspects of assessment centers, the networking that comes with being an assessment center. So I always tell you, in terms of the advice I would give you, be yourself. Be yourself and don't compare yourself to other people. Don't try to listen to what other graduates are telling you in terms of the interview questions, though, or what they were doing or what they answered, because that's going to make you nervous. You need to just bring yourself on the table and bring who you are. And I remember when we're discussing, very high level case study, and a lot of the engineers and the geologists were bringing very structured, factual information on the table. And I was talking about the people, because that's what I am. That's who I am. So like I said, initially, you need to have intention. Who are you? Who are you? Understand who you are, so that when you are able to, or trying to communicate that, people get it. And yeah, see, and that is it for me. So like I said initially, if you want to be an OM Insider, if you're not familiar what that is, I'm going to be doing a weekly newsletter. You can just on the subject line, sending through me an email. I don't know if you guys can see my email address, olwetumvelo1@gmail.com. You can send me an email, and you can register for a free webinar, as well as handouts that I will definitely have with my online and masterclass I'm trying to launch. And then if you've got any questions, more than welcome to put that on the comment section down below. And if you don't have time to go through that, you can definitely email them again to olwetumvelo1@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Great, thank you so much.
That's it for me. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Olwetu, for sharing that information with us. I'm going to ask the delegates if they have any questions to please raise their hands to indicate if they have a question. From my side, I think this is definitely something that's beneficial for our students, and I really like the 5 P's of predict, prevent, plan, participate, and perform that Ayadu mentioned in this Jungle Gym Y career. Debbie mentioned the Graduate Toolbox as well as the elevator pitch, and I think that's extremely important to really practice your elevator pitch, because it's going to sell. That 5 minutes is definitely going to sell who you are. And I certainly liked what Salome mentioned about shifting your mindset from being a student to being an employee. And that is quite a huge thing, to actually shift your mindset, not being a student anymore, but being an employee. And also saying it's okay to fail, because we learn from it. And then also where to those 7 tips that you indicated. I think it's wonderful. I like the idea of the mama rule of thumb, indicating whether or not, if mama sees it, will she be happy to see the picture? That's all what's going on in terms of your social media. And also that thank you letter afterwards. I don't think there's a lot of graduates or people even sending a thank you note. So we've got one person. I'm going to just allow Anza. You are welcome to unmute yourself and just to voice what your question is to the panelists.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Welcome.
Thank you. The question is to Olwetu. Thank you so much for the presentation. You were mentioning cleaning up your LinkedIn or social networks, and I'm just thinking how mine are just all over the place. But I wanted to know, is there any suggestion maybe where you can tell us for a CV template? Because I've tried my CV so many times, and I really wonder when I don't get responses that could it be the CV? And I go back. And then my LinkedIn also, I don't think it's up to standard, but I don't know how to make it up to standard. I go there and I feel this is all I can say about myself, unless maybe I'm just short-sighting or anything, but I don't know how to clean that up. And I like the presentations, they all touched on being intentional. We are not at all. Okay, I am not. Let me speak for myself. And then also, I don't know who mentioned when you go to interview, how you should see if you do fit into the organization. I've been to jobs where I just wanted to take the job because that was what was available. And 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the line, you realize this is not going to work for me. And quitting is not the easiest thing to do because you need to pay bills, but you know very well this is not the end goal. So yeah, my question would be on cleaning up the LinkedIn and cleaning up my CV, but also if anyone could touch on what happens now, because as someone who's unemployed, you do want to touch on something, but there are environments where it's just toxic or it's just not you, or you just, what do you do in the meantime? Yeah, while waiting. Thank you.
Okay, I think there's quite a lot of questions, but if you don't mind, I think I'm gonna touch on, I think you answer for those questions. I'm gonna touch on just on the LinkedIn and maybe the CV, and I'm just gonna just allow my the other panelist member to also talk about the other questions that you've had. So, you know, when it comes to social media, I understand that it's something that we as the youth use it quite often. But I will make this example with my little sister. She is now a pharmacist intern within the Department of Health. But when she was actually applying for a job, she was lucky to have an older sister like me to sort of like guide her in terms of how do you prepare your job marketing materials, how do you prepare for interviews and stuff like that, right? So I always say when it comes to your LinkedIn, it should always be aligned with your CV. So what you want to communicate on your CV should be on your LinkedIn, and your LinkedIn should even build it more in terms of the online personal branding that you bring to the forefront. Like I said, this is a time for you to actually network and where you have the opportunity to be connected with one of the most influential people within your field. I always believe a lot of the interviews or a lot of the jobs that are offered to people are based on people whom they already know. There's a level of trust that comes with referring to a candidate. So always overutilize your LinkedIn for networking, especially with people within your field. Also use it to gain and to learn. Example is LinkedIn Learning. I started using that last year when I started working because I realized that although I had gained some skill sets, I was still missing in terms of some of the professional skill sets that are not necessarily taught in university. For example, being resilient. You will learn that very soon, where you're going to deal with an assortment of people and personalities. And sometimes going online and learning those kind of tools, or even having a mentor like Debbie and I just mentioned in terms of having a mentor, even investing in a coach, which is something that I've done. So your CV should really speak to who you are and what you're trying to do. And it must always be aligned to what the employer is looking for. It's not about you, it's about the business pain. What is the business pain? And how are you telling and spoon feeding the recruiter that you are in alignment and you're the right person for the job? Are you showing the skill sets that you've had? Are you talking about the work experience, the personalities, the competencies that you've possessed? And are you really utilizing that piece of paper to show who you are and to show up as a personal brand? I think that's what I would touch on. I hope I've answered your question. I'll allow the other people to really elaborate on some of the questions that you've had.
Thank you. It does make a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Great. And Angela, you have mentioned a question in the Q&A. Would you like to voice that question?
Yes, please. First off, thank you so much for this very insightful webinar. I have about 5 years of work experience, but not in the industrial psychology industry at all. It was prior to making that career transition. So I'm currently completing my honors and due to be finished in February. Exams are in February. And I have noticed that most companies offer internships for either first or second year master's students. I was wondering if it's recommended to do an internship prior to going into the field fully as a full-on employee, or if I would be able to, not logistically, but will I have the knowledge and skills and experience? Do you think I'd have enough before doing an internship just to press on to apply for a job in the field?
Salome, would you care to answer?
Yes. So in essence, actually, any experience is valuable experience. With that said, for example, if you're managing a team either in the IOP field, if it's either grew a team in the mining industry, it's still skills that you have adapted and that you already actually putting you ahead specifically. So when you do enter the field, you are going to already have a head start in that regard. And with that also being said, my opinion would be is if you can get an internship, if you want to go that route, you can. But I think actually because you've also got the experience, if you can get into a level where you can already utilize the skills and everything you've got while still learning also the skills of the IOP field, as well as, because also you must think now there's also financial situations that differ, obviously. If you go into the internship route or if you maybe go for a full-time employment situation as well. And with regards to that, also the type of environment you're going on in. Are you going maybe on what type of level are you going in? Because the exposure and the experience you're going to get and gain is going to differ as well. So I think it depends on what your aim and vision is, what you hope to achieve from the experience would help you to decide which path to go to, if that makes sense. I don't know if that helps you with regards to your question.
Great, thank you so much, Salome. Yes, our time has run out. I would like to ask, and I do unfortunately had to go already, but any last inspirational words from our panel? Debbie, can we start from your side? What would be your inspirational closure for our future generation?
I think for me, something that I would like to leave with everybody is just to really ask yourself that everything that you do and that you plan to do or that you put your mind and heart to, do it in excellence. Like ask yourself, have I done this task? Have I done the following responsibility to the best of my ability? Does this ooze out excellence? Is this something that someone else will be proud of? Whether it's compiling a CV or doing your LinkedIn account, is it the best that you could have done, or is it just something you put together quickly to get it done? So for me, be excellent. Do everything that you do in excellence. That's what I would have loved to leave with you this afternoon. And good luck if you are searching for jobs. It is a job itself, but really do not be discouraged or be lazy of doing it. You'll thank yourself because the efforts do really pay after a while. So build yourself well in the process, and it will pay off ultimately and eventually. So yeah, good luck.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Salome, from your side?
I think I still want to actually emphasize what I mentioned in the famous last word parts about whatever you do it fully, do it wholeheartedly. So it actually also integrates with what Debbie is saying at the moment. So the output that you deliver, the work that you deliver, the quality that you deliver, that's your signature of your work. That's what you're putting out there. People that don't know you are going to look at your work. What did you put out there? What's the quality? Because that's going to speak volumes. And people are going to refer to the work rather that you did and what you did, how you did it, rather to you as a person specifically, because they're going to first see your work and get into contact with that than you as the individual. So whatever you do it to the best of your ability. You can't do more than your best. If you know you've done your best, that's great. But if you feel, no, I could have done more, do that next time. Take those learnings and don't be afraid to fail, guys. There's negative connotation actually with failure, but failure is how you learn. So embrace it and take the learnings from it, and then just move forward, because you are a trooper, you're a gladiator. You can do this. You must just believe in yourself and go forward.
Thank you so much, Salome. Oweti, from your side?
I think from my side, one thing I really want to stress on is energy. What is the energy that you're putting out into the universe? And what is your attitude as well? Because that is very much reflective in terms of what you're attracting. So again, be intentional. Know what you want. There's a nice quote that I love where it says, "You have not because you've asked not." If you don't know what you want, how are you going to work towards that particular goal and dream? How are you going to make sure that you're aligned with the goal and the dream? And how are you actually going to communicate that and manifest it? So again, for me, it's energy, it's your attitude, and it's to know what you want and then try to figure out then how can I work backwards in attaining that goal? Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. From my side, I would really like to thank all the panelists that shared their experience and expertise, and also the tips and the graduate toolkits and toolbox today. I think it's an excellent way to actually put some knowledge and gain some skills that you can actually put into your toolkit or your toolbox that you can take further. But yes, to our delegates out there, please connect with these panelists and also connect with us at SIOPSA. We are currently looking for volunteers. So yes, please do that. That would be great if you can be part of SIOPSA and also just join us and volunteer. So panelists, thank you very much. Delegates, thank you so much. Everyone, have a lovely afternoon. And for those that missed out on the session, you are welcome to just tune into YouTube again and just relook the session. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.